When did someone lose their life? Because they didn't listen to you? I was 7 years old when I became obsessed with lightning strikes after watching a documentary about storm chasers on the Discovery Channel. My parents were total hippies who lived for what they called weekly adventures, where we do something wild and spontaneous every Saturday. They'd taken me cliff jumping and midnight hiking and even swimming with dolphins once. But I'd started learning about electrical storms and how they killed more people than sharks every year. My obsession got pretty intense that summer. I'd check weather reports constantly on our old desktop computer and memorize cloud formations that meant thunderstorms were coming. I kept a notebook where I drew pictures of cumulonimbus clouds and wrote down facts about lightning traveling at 270,000 miles per hour. My parents thought it was cute that I was so interested in science, but they didn't really take my warning seriously. One Friday night in July, my dad announced that tomorrow's adventure would be going to the beach during a storm. He said there was nothing more beautiful than feeling rain on the ocean and watching waves crash during bad weather. My mom clapped her hands and said it would be spiritual and cleansing. I immediately pulled up the weather forecast and showed them the severe thunderstorm warning, but they just ruffled my hair and said a little rain never hurt anyone. I spent that whole night reading about beach lightning strikes on the computer. The sand could turn to glass when lightning hit it. People could get struck from miles away when storms were still approaching. Water conducted electricity and made beaches the worst place to be during thunderstorms. I printed out articles and left them on the kitchen table, but my parents just moved them aside while packing sandwiches for our beach trip. Saturday morning came with dark clouds already forming on the horizon. I begged my parents to cancel, but my dad said I worried too much for a little kid. He loaded up our van with beach chairs and towels, while my mom made me put on my swimsuit. I grabbed my lightning notebook and kept pointing at the sky where I could see the anvil-shaped clouds forming. Those meant serious thunderstorms, but my parents just said the clouds looked artistic. The drive to the beach took 45 minutes, and the whole time I watched the sky get darker. The radio kept interrupting songs with weather alerts, but my dad just turned it down and put on his favorite Grateful Dead album. My mom was in the passenger seat talking about how indigenous people used to dance in storms to connect with nature. I sat in the back, calculating how far away the storm was by counting the seconds between lightning and thunder. When we got to the beach, it was almost empty except for a few surfers who were leaving. The lifeguard stands were abandoned with red flags whipping in the wind. The waves were huge and gray, and the air felt electric like static was building up everywhere. I grabbed my dad's hand and tried to pull him back to the car, but he just laughed and said I'd been watching too many scary documentaries. My parents set up our chairs right on the sand while the first drops of rain started falling. They held hands and faced the ocean with their eyes closed like they were meditating. I stood behind them jumping every time I heard thunder in the distance. The storm was moving fast, and I could see lightning striking over the water getting closer with each flash. I kept yelling that we needed to leave, but the wind was so loud they couldn't hear me. The rain got heavier and started coming sideways with the wind. My parents were laughing and spinning around with their arms out like little kids. I was crying and pulling on my mom's dress trying to get her attention. The lightning was hitting the water now, and I could smell ozone in the air, which meant it was dangerously close. I screamed that we were going to die, but they just kept dancing in the rain. Then everything went white and silent for a second. The lightning hit the sand about 20 feet from where my dad was standing, and the thunder was so loud it knocked me backwards. My dad dropped straight to the ground and didn't move. My mom screamed and ran to him while I stood there frozen. The sand where the lightning struck had turned into a twisted glass sculpture that was still smoking. My mom was shaking my dad and crying while I finally snapped out of it and ran to help. His left side wasn't moving at all and his eyes were only half open. My mom grabbed her phone and called 911 while I held my dad's hand and told him it would be okay. The paramedics came fast and said the electrical current had traveled through the wet sand and partially paralyzed his left side. My dad spent 3 months in the hospital learning to walk again. He never got full movement back in his left arm and leg. After that, my parents started listening when I warned them about weather. They still did their weekly adventures, but they checked my notebooks first and never went out in storms again.